left a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, good afternoon, Chair Postman, Board Member Volandroff, staff and guests. The lobbies are open. Recording has begun.
Thanks, Justin. Good afternoon, everybody. We'll convene the executive management team meeting for September 11th, 2024. First up on our agenda today is an enforcement education update with Director Chandra Wax. Seat up.
Good afternoon. How are you today?
Good, very good.
Good to see everyone. I will be thanking Dustin in advance for driving my slides. I think I've proven in the past that I am simply unable to talk and change slides at the very same time. Just noting the number of licenses for frame of reference and also noting a small increase in liquor licensees and a small decrease in cannabis licensees. I would point out that if you're looking for the most accurate number of licenses, licensing is the place to get that. Looking at our number of complaints by unit, you'll notice that we've broken out the cannabis consultants here separately. As we mentioned last month, you'll be seeing the addition of some liquor complaints as well. So you can see generally that these numbers stay pretty static without the jump we saw in June for those cannabis compliance consultants. Moving on and looking specifically at what those complaints are related to, you can see these public safety percentages in each of our industries. This stays pretty consistent, just so you know, and I would point out to you if there was much of a variance in these numbers for the public safety, for percentage of complaints that are related to public safety. One of the things that is new is looking at consultants and the fact that they're handling some of the issues they're handling are related to public safety. And that's because those traceability items fall into the public safety category. So as we start to do education in areas, those do qualify as public safety topics. When we look specifically at our education and violation, you'll see that the education contacts we're making on the left in 2024 are running pretty on target for what we've done the past few years. And then looking over at AVNs and NTCs, considering that this is inclusive of month 8 of 2024, NTC being formal written kind of warning, notice to correct document. Also, education is being more utilized to work with licensees to gain compliance, and then the warning process as well. Looking specifically at licensee education, when we look at 2024 by quarter, you will see the same thing. Lots of educational contacts out there in the field. These are our officers and compliance consultants talking with our licensees, giving them specific advice about compliance from a regulatory perspective. And when we start to look at comparing the education contacts by year and by industry, tobacco and vapor is on track to probably exceed the same for all the industries, the level of education, if not at least meet, probably exceed the level of education that's happened in the prior years. And that's just great news, especially considering our staffing situation as well. Looking specifically month by month, we're not seeing anything out of the ordinary in August, other than a typo there on liquor consultants. You are seeing some of the work here starting to happen out of that liquor consultant program, and that is likely off of our MIW team, because we do have some work happening there already and happening in the month of August. So that'll be exciting to watch those numbers grow. what are the topics that we're out there providing education about in our industries? And the top 5, as you can see, and this has stayed pretty static, although sometimes with trends it changes. Regulatory, public safety, youth access, licensing permits, and new licensee support. I would say we've been working with our public health liaisons here in the LCB and some of the other agencies in the state that do youth access education to see how we can partner and do more with youth access, recognizing that the work we're doing with compliance checks is a big part of preventing youth access in the state, but that we can do more with education partners to do that work as well. Notice to corrects. How are we using those, and what are we seeing out there that is rising to a little bit more serious of a level that we want to start documenting, getting to compliance, and that's those traceability concerns, advertising violations, record keeping requirements, floor plan problems, and then of course those required surveillance systems. And this is a new slide. We pop a new one in every once in a while. And this is comparing NTCs. We hear a lot about, oh, we've been using notice to corrects more. And so you'll see here on a calendar almost when our alerts and CCRS started working here in March and April. And again, you'll see a jump there in July. So but pretty consistently, you can see that over the year of 2024, we've used NTCs, that tool a little bit more even than in 2023. Looking at our violations or warnings and AVNs for 2024, and then again over on the right, the NTCs, just comparing the violations to warnings. Work that's happening out in the field. When we look at topics that we're using those AVNs for, what we want to see is those public safety or high risk violations, and we're seeing youth access right there in the top 3, and then sale of service to an apparently intoxicated person, and then some of those conduct violations where the licensee or the employee is drinking. Question? Oh, sorry, I thought I heard one. Warning topics. A lot of these numbers you can see are driven by the tobacco, vapor, and FDA team. Then we have some mask violations. Traceability pops in there again. And then failure to post required signs and non-compliance with record keeping requirements. So one of the things that I look for when I look at this data is just seeing that we're appropriately using our warnings at the right level for topics. And also you can see certain issues like traceability that are serious issues, and they can hint to things like diversion and inversion, which we want to make sure and take seriously. You can see our staff attempting to use education to gain compliance and warnings and NTCs, and eventually you can see the AVNs start to happen for those things. These are our alternative dispute resolutions. So over here on the liquor side, in the month of August, you can see that we had 38 resolved uncontested, and then we had 2 go to formal hearing, 32 resolved at informal hearing, and then 2 where we were unable to reach a compromise. Over on the cannabis side in August, 6 of these were resolved uncontested. 1 at a formal hearing, 2 at a formal hearing, and 1 with a compromise not reached. So a lot of great work still happening. As you know, our goal is to resolve at the lowest level possible, and this is just more efforts happening in that area. Start to take a look at liquor compliance and youth access. We had a period of time where we were not conducting compliance checks while we updated our policies, procedures, and forms. And in August, our staff got out there and did 113 checks, and we're seeing 68% compliance rate. One of the things that I would point out is, if you recall, about a year ago, we started doing the random assignments of locations for officers to conduct compliance checks. And so instead of selecting where we would go to do compliance check, we started assigning it so that we would get through all of the licensees in the state of Washington in a period of time. And so what's happening now is we're coming to the end of our list, so to speak, and there are a higher number of on-premise locations than we were conducting typically. And so because that compliance rate is lower in the on-premise locations, it appears to be quite a bit lower with our compliance checks overall. That being said, it is a reflection of what the compliance rate is in the state of Washington, and I would say that is a dismal number, and something that's one of the reasons why we're working to partner in other ways to impact youth access as well, to see if we can't have more impact through education and youth education, licensee education, and parent education. And when we look at that cannabis compliance rate, we did 103 compliance checks in the month of August with a 94% compliance rate. And just keeping that, the cannabis retail stores are age restricted. And so again, they're not dealing with the on-premise dynamic that the liquor licensees are. When we look at tobacco vapor, we did have an increase up to 91% in the month of August, and you'll see later when we talk about the FDA data, we a consistent number, and we don't typically see jumps like that. FDA did not see a jump like that, and we're currently looking at the data to see if, for example, the types of locations we checked maybe impacted that data, but it was kind of an interesting uptick in the data. Looking at numbers of premise checks, I would say if you look up there in that upper right-hand corner, a shout out to the cannabis unit who has visited 89% of our licensee locations in the past year. So doing a great job. And just numbers here. I mean, looking at the sheer number of locations and licensees and contacts that our staff are out there having with the people we serve is very good, and I'm encouraged. And this is an area we've been talking a lot about. We believe that ID checking also impacts youth access, and we're committed to doing that, and we're not producing those numbers in the field right now. And so the captains and I had some conversations about why that is, and if we still believe that that's important work, and if so, why these are the numbers we're producing across the state. So more to come on that. Of course, our CRY unit, we don't hear much or probably talk a lot about our CRY unit, but I know a lot of divisions rely on the work of this unit for hiring, for licensing, for backgrounds. And so they do great work. They do a lot of work for our agency. When we're doing renewals, this work is very important, and lots of background checks happening. That work continues to happen well. So we're very thankful for that. Examiner, we like to track what our examiners are up to. This slide's going to look a little bit different in the future. Rather than be cumulative, we'll see some comparative data. It'll be a little more useful to us to see if the work is changing. But our goal when we moved to this unit under the cannabis team was to have there be more partnership and better use of our data in partnership with the enforcement and education units within our division. And you can see that that work continues. They had over 40 hours of field time, which means they're out in the field looking at how what they see compares to what's actually entered in the system, and just doing some comparison of that. And so that is working out well as we move forward. Just keeping you informed about what our advertising staff are dealing with as far as requests goes: general ads in cannabis, some outdoor ads in cannabis, sweepstakes and rebates for liquor, and then of course some events for cannabis advertising. We talked about this a little bit. Our FDA team, through a contract with the FDA, is out there doing an additional almost 900 inspections for the third quarter in the tobacco vapor area, and then 684 additional undercover buy attempts. But that compliance rate stays pretty solid at 85%. And then we have one open internal investigation, and we closed one of those. Of course, our hiring and recruiting teams and training teams continue to just knock it out of the park. We hired 2 LEOs and promoted our Chemist 3 to Chemist 4 this month. Graduated 4 from the academy in Spokane just this week, so that's very exciting. And then we have a couple of graduations coming up as well. We've been attending recruiting events and continue to look for ways to recruit. We've got some recruiting signs on buses and in sporting events, and are doing what we can to fill positions. In the area of training, we've been doing quite a bit of driving training and then other training related to changing legislation, and also just making sure that our professional certification training is kept up to date as well. And then just to keep you informed about the other work that your team is doing out in the state, we are meeting with the Department of Revenue to make sure we're all consistently interpreting laws and rules the same as we work together. We have some partnerships out there with Kiwanis, working in partnership with them on a youth law enforcement camp, which is awesome for us because we get to be involved with that project. And then also it's an opportunity for us to, meet some young folks that might want to work as IAs, or, again, more opportunities to talk about youth access. We are doing lots of work out there in our communities as the summer wraps up with some of the summer things like Rod Run. And I think you've seen us in the news a few times lately for some unlicensed locations, both nightclubs and liquor locations at the B&I building in Tacoma. And there's just a lot of great work happening out there. So any questions?
I have a question. I had to take myself off mute. Thank you for the update, as usual. So we've talked about youth access, and I really appreciate the work that you're doing with Kristen Haley and others. I just had a general question about, is there anything that you need additionally to continue to address this issue? And then secondly, to recognize that enforcement is just doing their job. And so the reflection of the low numbers has nothing really to do with enforcement itself. It's more around policy, or it's around other things. Are there other areas of the LCB that we should be tasking with working on youth access in addition to who's already working on that issue?
I would say if you look at the research, what the research tells us is that the compliance checks and swift and significant consequences, so the fines, have the most impact on youth access rates, followed by youth and parent education. And so I know that our research team is circled into looking at that information, as well as we've been working on. Right now what we're identifying is all of the points of access, and then potentially how different areas in the LCB could impact that. And just this morning I met with our partners at HCA, and we've been working.
I heard Sarah Mariani made sure and said to give you a shout out. She enjoyed meeting with you today.
Yeah, Sarah and I met this morning, and then our team, a couple of representatives from LCB and a couple of other state agencies will be meeting tomorrow morning, actually, to discuss just that. How else can we partner? Where there are monies for education and our knowledge and access to one of the points of access, the licensees, how can we partner to make sure that we're doing all we can to impact that? But I feel like when this topic comes up, everybody in the LCB is interested and invested in making a difference. So
Great. Thank you. I have one additional question.
Okay.
You mentioned the youth ID checks and there was more to come. Was there any, just like initially, why do you think there's been a decrease? Is it too early to ask that question based on your initial conversations with folks, or what are some of the initial things you're hearing about the decrease in those youth ID checks?
Well, we had a law change, as you know, and the law change requires quite a bit. Sometimes when we're addressing youth, we had a law change, and I think maybe that we need to offer some clarity around what's required as a result of that law change, and just get back to focusing on this being one of the pieces of work we do out there. It's not something that we only do when we have a focus on it. It's something that we do when we're out in the field. And yeah, I think that it's just
Okay.
it's an area that we can work on and something that we can be reminded about.
Well, it's like you pointed out. I mean, it's immediate consequences are helpful, and that's an immediate consequence for a young person just to have that conversation in the moment. So I really support those and look forward to seeing an increase in that area.
Yeah, and like we were talking about yesterday, even I said, even if the person you card is 22, there might be somebody sitting 6 chairs down that is not. And trust me, you have made an impact on youth access that day.
That's right. Thank you.
Yeah, any other questions?
Yeah, I have one. Remind me of the word you used when you're in response to that question about youth access. Swift and significant penalty? Swift and what?
I think I may have said severe, and I'll have to
Or
refresh my memory on what I
Well-
probably said severe or significant.
so my
It has to
question is,
be meaningful.
right, ours significant, and how can we determine that? Can we do a national look and see where we rate for youth access violations?
Well, that sounds like some research, board chair.
I could talk to the research people about that. I think unless there's some other way to know whether or not we
I think we can
can
just
say whether
compare
our
what,
penalties are
what our fines are compared to what other places are. I think that's pretty easy work to do, and something that I think is on our list for this team to do as well is take a look at it. So
I
that
think
is
that the fine area is an area where we definitely could do some research and work. We saw recently legislation that significantly increased the fines for tobacco sales to minors. And I don't know the outcome of that yet, but it's with the idea that yes, swift and severe, I don't know if that's the word you used or not either, but is important.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
I'll
the
tell
other
you,
thing I would say, one of the challenges of coming up with the appropriate fine is that if you're a family that owns a store, the definition of severe or significant fine for you is probably different than a larger chain store or restaurant that has quite a bit more resources at hand to pay a fine. So we have
saying we
that's
should have a sliding scale based on annual sales.
Well, I don't know what the solution is. I just know that it's different. So if we come up with
Of
something
course.
that the small corner store would consider significant and severe, it's certainly not going to have an impact on, the
One
store.
way to measure significance is, does it stop them from doing it again?
Yeah. Well, 68% of the time it does.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, we will move to, that's it, right? Yes, Director? Good, thank you. Okay, Mark Webster for legislative update.
Good afternoon, Chair Postman and Board Member Vollendroff. I spoke at length about the agency request bills that we're likely to be putting forward to the governor this week, so I don't want to go over that again. But if you have questions, by all means, Board Member Vollendroff, I'd be happy to take them. Instead, I think I'll just take a moment to preview a presentation that staff will be giving next week to the House Regulated Substances and Gaming Committee. That's on the 17th, I believe. It's virtual. We're not going to be up at the Capitol. The agenda has kind of morphed as we've been talking with the chairs. I'm looking over at Will because he's been in those conversations as well. So I think I'm capturing the final or near final version. But we're going to be talking about the implementation of House Bill 1453, the medical cannabis excise tax exemption. And of course, you had some presentations about that at the meeting today. And we will likely mention our bill on that topic, the information sharing between the LCB and the Department of Health. Next, we're going to talk very briefly, I think, about traceability. I think legislators want to know first how we're approaching the study requirement that was in the high THC bill from Representative Davis, House Bill 2320. I think we're totally on track, and CCRS can get us the information that we need to answer the questions that they've set out for us. But I think it's also an opportunity to mention that we're beginning that process of looking into the next generation of traceability for cannabis and pulling in those features that we'd like to see going forward, and how it can work and integrate with SMP. And then finally, we're going to do a review of the whole DDE Okanagan County issue from 2023, how we found it, how we do testing, what we've done since, as well as how we keep customers safe going forward. I think that all leads into presentations by Department of Ecology and I believe Department of Agriculture as well, because they got funding in the budget, after that occurred, so they can kind of go over some of the results that they had and what they found. So we're going to have Justin here do that first component on 1453. Captain Murphy from the E&E team is going to do that DDE review. Still kind of thinking about the traceability. It might be me. And so again, this is a work session that came up as a result of interest from members and the chairs. And so if you have any ideas for a work session down the road, probably not even in December, but in January, let me know. If other folks in other divisions have a good idea for a work session, let's collect those ideas. I think we have a good relationship with both the committees in the House and the Senate, and of course, in a long session, they often do more of them. I think there's going to be an appetite for just to hear from us. So if there's a story that we would like to share, let's collect those ideas. I was just talking with Director Wax yesterday about one of those.
When is the work session next week?
The 17th. It's Tuesday.
Oh, it is. Okay. Yeah, if possible, I'd love to see what we're going to present on traceability and the DE after action before you guys
I haven't
go.
seen I haven't seen the drafts yet. We're going to, of course, work with communication and Brian's team on that. But yeah, great. Good point.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any questions for Mark, Jim? No. Okay. We'll move to a licensing update with Becky Smith, the licensing and regulation director.
So good afternoon, Chair Postman, Board Member Vollendroff, and others. I'm going to start with our customer satisfaction results. I think, Chair Postman, if you remember, you joined us a few weeks ago and we spoke touched a little bit about the satisfaction survey, but I thought it would be great to bring it forward and show it to you. Last month, licensing supervisors shared their quarterly results. Part of the session included customer satisfaction results. We've been very pleased with the results and use this information to make improvements in our process. That liquor licensing unit, you'll see here 97% extremely or moderately satisfied, and then 3% moderately dissatisfied. Customer service unit, 95% extremely satisfied or neutral, and then 5% moderately dissatisfied. And with cannabis, we have 100% extremely or moderately satisfied. This data represents second quarter of 2024, and it's a total of 85 responses, which doesn't seem like it's a huge, but it's some feedback, and we use the feedback to make some changes. That it is anonymous for the most part. With what I say the most part, because with cannabis, the supervisors actually reach out to those licensees. that, but if someone is receiving a license, a permit, an alteration request, they can complete the survey. Folks can put comments in, and there's comments with feedback. So we review all of the feedback and address it as needed. This past survey, we had a lot of really great comments about staff, and something that, some of the comments we used to improve our process. I think I mentioned that. But let me give you an example. So two of the comments were about our website, that it's difficult to navigate, which is in progress of being updated right now. And I'm sure Brian will share that with you. Another comment was about our forms and being able to access them in a way that's they're able to upload the documents a lot easier, which of course is being addressed with our SMP. That we share all of the results with our, with all the supervisors, with all of the staff, and we go through the information. But I was pretty pleased by seeing this, the satisfaction rate with our survey and the amount of folks that actually really put a lot in there about our staff and call our staff out for really the great work that they're doing with them and how quickly and how responsive they are. So I'm going to stop there and see if you have questions.
I have one on this. First of all, these are great numbers. It's great to see. It was great to hear. So you said it was 85 responses out of how many? Like how many do we send out? What's our return rate?
Oh, that was our 84 responses. So it's probably about 10% of our return rate
Okay.
because we issue a lot of licenses and permits.
And so you said on the cannabis, they'll call them, but on the others, is that something that they get automatically emailed everybody after a contact?
It is after a permit is issued or their alteration is completed.
Right. That's great. Okay, good. Thank
I
you.
had a follow-up question, Becky. It sounds and similar. I think you somewhat answered it. So customer is defined as a licensee, or is it anybody calling into the licensing department for any reason at all?
No, it is a licensee.
Okay, that's what I thought after hearing Dave. But great job. Yeah, congratulations to you and your staff for
No, thank you.
those results.
Yeah, they do great work. So a few other updates I wanted to provide is around some education and outreach. So through the Small Business Liaison Team with the Office of the Regulatory Innovation and Assistance, licensing was invited to attend the Korean Chambers of Commerce meeting on August 23rd in Seattle. That along with a few other agencies, Misty Jones, our liquor manager, and Linda Brock, our supervisor in cannabis, went out and answered questions, gave some updates about about liquor licenses. And it was actually a really great turnout on a Friday in Seattle. That licensing staff are preparing to also attend an annual small business fair. We attend this fair every year. It's an important fair for us to attend because it is about small businesses that that we enforcement will show up, we get a table and really just share information about our license types, what kind of services we have. We provide a lot of pamphlets as well, but a good event. And then strategic planning that our leadership team and our management team and our staff have been working really, really hard. They've been really active with our agency's strategic plan. So upcoming in the next few months, the licensing division will be meeting with industry representatives. That the intention of these discussions is really to gather a perspective and an understanding on different topic areas specific to liquor licensing. So we're not going to do cannabis yet. It's just liquor. And we're going to separate the two groups for retail and non-retail. It really is a discussion. It's a small group of folks, so we can have that discussion about trends, about best practice, some barriers, industry needs. But again, it's specific to licensing. That I think we sent out our invites, and we got responses back very quickly from the industry about their willingness and wanting to participate. So we're excited to see what comes of that, and we'll certainly keep everybody informed of what we hear from the industry. And then I believe Board Member Vollendroff is going to join us for the sports and entertainment facilities meet and greet with those folks and best practice when it comes to work with them, and that's in November. And then back up to social equity. So I just want to give a short update about social equity because we are finished with our request for proposal for the third-party vendor. That oral interviews happened and were completed last week. I believe we're getting ready to share who that successful bidder was for social equity. And so we're excited to hear more about that in the coming days. And then in regards to the applications, not a lot of change, but some progress. So again, we have 4 social equity licenses that have been issued. And then we have 5 that currently have found a location. They've secured a location. And in those counties are Franklin, 2 in King County, Grant County, and Pierce County. Again, finding a location is really what has been the biggest barrier for folks now that they have received grant money from the Department of Commerce. So we're moving ahead and continuing to process those applications.
Quick question on that. So is the 5 that have found locations in addition to the 4 who had licenses issued? So
No, that's in the 5 and additional.
So yeah, 5 additional, you're saying, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
potential for 9 to. Am I doing my math? Yeah. Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
you're right. Yep. And most of them, it appears, will be done by, they're hoping by December at the latest, getting licensed.
Great.
And that's it for licensing.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
To the other Smith, Brian Smith, communications update. That never gets old for me.
Thank you, Chair Postman and Member Vollendroff and people here and watching. Just as I always do, kind of start off with the media. Again, it's been kind of a steady trickle coming through, a lot of localized issues. You heard Director Wax talking about the BNI and the enforcement work that we did out there, a lot of those kind of things that happen around the state. That's just ongoing work. But there's been 2 kind of significant or unusual ones, one with the Wall Street Journal that did a deep dive into lab results. And we never quite got to the bottom of what they were looking for, but they did ask us to review some of the data that they found. And we, our chemist and enforcement folks took a look at it, and it didn't quite match up to some of the inferences that they were pulling from that, and kind of corrected them on some of their data. And they have not come back on that, but that was an unusual request to kind of come through from them. Also on labs, I don't know if the 2 are connected, but the LA Times, quite a bit of questions from the LA Times about our lab practices, and specifically one incident from 2019 in a chemical that we had found in a pesticide test that had turned up. And they're doing in LA, there's one lab that's suing 13 other labs. It's in the news today. I think it's on our news clips. That's sort of driving a lot of this. So I think they're looking at lab practices around the country, or at least in the West. Director Wax and I got on in an interview with the reporter from the Times and to explain our role with the Washington State Department of Agriculture and how they test for us with investigations, as well as the random testing aspect, which I don't think they have in California, which they thought was significant. So I asked her to send me a link to that article. This has been going on now for a couple of weeks when they're complete, but she said she would, but she also sent me back more questions. So I'm not going to reach out to her again on that because we've been talking to her an awful lot. So we thank the Enforcement Division for all that they've done and just digging up research and things that they're asking for, and Chandra for her availability and continuing to do this. Another one is, and she touched on this a little bit, was that media around unlicensed place that we know there was a fatality at an unlicensed location in Seattle that the Seattle Times had reported on recently. An editorial writer from that paper, that's the person that you pushed on to me, David. Sean and I did speak with that person about how we go about our business with an unlicensed club and explaining how that thing works. You know, when you have a license, we can hold you accountable. When you don't have a license, it's a little more complicated, and there's another route for being able to enforce that. So he had some subsequent questions that her team has helped us to provide back to that writer, but we haven't seen anything on that yet. And so we'll see, but she did a great job, I think, in that interview. So kind of moving on to something else is this time of year, every 4 years, is that there's an expectation for a transition document, or in this case, a PowerPoint for the incoming governor. With Will, figure out to do this. And he asked me to help coordinate that. So I'm working with the divisions on the content for this. Something a little different this year is that it's more, they're asking a lot, but they're emphasizing brevity. So whereas before we go into
questions.
yeah. So in your former role, David, you probably understand maybe why that's important and why they'd want it that way. So that's due on October 4th, just a regular thing, but just to let you know, I will bring it back before David, and you'll have a chance along with Will and Tony to see what's in there and what you might want to add to it or what we want to change. The two main things that you've heard me talk about before are going great, which are my year of technology. One is the agency website transformation, working multiple days a week with the vendor now on things we need to do to clean up the website, to get it ready to transition in October. So the first phase was the design phase. We built it on personas, which is how people use our website. They're a certain type of person looking to do a specific type of a task, and it's namely getting a permit, getting a license, doing this. They're not really here to poke around and read about us and stuff like that. They're here to do a task. We know they come here mostly on their phones, and they get what they need, they get their permit, and they're gone. And so our new website is going to be built around that type of persona. So when Becky said, it was hard, one of the things they said, it was hard to get around the website on that. We hope to be able to streamline those promises. I'm really happy with the way it looks in the prototype, but now we're in the development phase and going through where IT has played a really big role and been very valuable to helping us be able to explain things and understand what's going on in the back end of our website. I will say, though, that of the same survey that Becky does, I didn't see the results of this month, but people who apply for a license always give the website high marks for how they find the permit. So we know at least that part that they're getting through on that. And then on the SharePoint Online, which is the agency intranet, part of it is already up. You've seen it. You see what it looks like on the comms page and the IT and stuff. Right now, underway is the board office, the director's office, various things, tribal research, project management, others. So HR is coming on. So my team, shout out to Sam and to Brad, who do a lot of the hands-on work on a daily basis, working with each of those employees and divisions to be able to help them develop their page. It's been going really well, I think, and they're coming along quickly. And that next phase will be rolling out in early October. And so, again, it's where our emphasis is. It's going along. I think people are excited to be able to do their own page once they get a chance to get in there and make it their own and do a little bit of that hands-on stuff. I think that they're enjoying it. And then just lastly, to touch on the Julie's work outside of SMP is that she's leading the governor's executive order implementation on plain language. She's got a group together representing all the divisions and has regular meetings with them and works through the documents as expected by the governor's office. It's kind of work that she really likes too. And it's a nice break from her SMP stuff. So, any questions?
No. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Turn to policy and Justin North.
All right, good afternoon, Chair Postman and Member Wallendrop. So lots going on, of course, in the policy areas. You heard some from Mark already that we're working on finalizing some stuff for next week. On the tribal front, I wanted to call out that we are finishing up a couple of MOAs, so we're right on the cusp of completing additional MOAs and I believe a compact. And also, we will have agency representation next week at the Centennial Accord. And so that's a pretty significant thing that happens annually. On the research front, you've heard a lot this last month. We've had some presentations, but we've been completing a lot of research briefs. They're completing standard operating procedures, so folks across the agency understand what goes into these, how much time, and how we're going to evaluate whether some stuff moves forward or not. So we really have to look at what that resource implication is before we dig in too far on all of the requests, because we are getting a lot, which is great. So we want to be mindful and careful about what gets prioritized as we spend our resources there. The other areas around public health. So a lot going on in the public health area. So we did some hybrid THC work groups this last month we attended, or actually late July, and then the second of the series was held in August. And so since our last EMT. And then we are going to be launching an internal discussion group for policy in a couple weeks. The first topic on our agenda is alcohol product placement. And so it's kind of a revised format of something that we did a few years ago. And so we've got a collection of internal folks that are going to be able to brainstorm. I think one of the changes that folks can expect to see on this particular discussion group is it's not a decision making. There's going to be no concepts discussed around what's the decision for this, so people can open up and present multiple perspectives on an issue. Now, it may lead into other decisions later, but at the same, we don't want to have any type of parameter of a decisions being made at that point, because people sometimes will get reluctant on sharing some of the counterpoints. We really want to make sure that we have a robust discussion that we can evaluate a number of perspectives that folks bring based on their experience. We are also next month moderating an ADAI symposium keynote panel, and so we plan to have representation there for that moderating, and then Kristen will be there all day as well, participating in the rest of the group. We've also had some discussions with the Y Coalition or members of the Y Coalition, particularly around the THC rule development, trying to clarify some of the questions. It's a highly technical rule set, as you have heard before. And so we've been trying to answer a lot of questions for folks and create awareness and understanding. And I'll come back to that piece here in a moment. But the other thing that we did last month, which was kind of exciting, is Kristen sat on a panel with the Oregon Liquor Control Commission and her counterpart down there to discuss the role of public health liaisons at these state agencies, because we're one of the very, very few in the nation that does this and prioritizes that work. And so trying to spread the word on, what are the benefits of these types of programs. And there was a lot of interest in that. So that was really nice to hear and have that invite to participate. So on the rules front, you've heard most of the issues already. So we have the legislative report that's due on bias-based language review. And so we are looking at finalizing that this week so we can submit it over for review. We also have scheduled for next week a supplemental, we have a discussion on the 5080 rulemaking implementation to evaluate. So we're going to review, confirm, and consider what the public comments were today and whether or not a supplemental CR 102 is appropriate. And so happy to answer any questions on that process if folks have any, because we haven't done it in a while.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, so this will be a rules team meeting.
Yeah.
With what we heard today and anything else.
Correct.
That would have come. So what is the process, the threshold there for what, I know it's supposed, if substantive change requires 102, but how will we go about this? Because I'm interested in hearing what some of that discussion is. And do you bring proposals to the board for supplemental? Does the board tell you if we heard something that we think is worthy of supplemental? How do we do this?
Quite frankly, I think all of the above.
Okay.
Because, we're going to have a number of written comments to review and look at and consider. We also have the public testimony today that we will be considering and trying to figure out, are there opportunities, to improve that rule draft. And so if there's something that would be substantive change, which I think from the comments that we heard today, if we were to adopt some of those perspectives, then yes, we would need a supplemental CR.
Probably any of the specifics we heard today would be substantive.
Yeah, and so, we're scheduled for the CR 103 to be presented on the 25th. I think I can confidently say that's not going to happen. We're going to push that date out so that we can make sure that we have a well thought out proposal to present to the board. And so the way that the CR 102 works is if we're making changes and we do a supplemental CR 102 at this point, it kind of goes back to the beginning of the CR 102 phase. So what we would be doing is coming to the board, and we haven't determined a date. If that's the direction that we go, we'll identify a date in the next few weeks where we would come and present to the board a supplemental CR 102. Which would have modified language, but it kind of starts that whole process over. And so we'll have to notice and then have another public hearing on that rule set in the future. And so we'll be looking at the timelines associated with that.
Is that then our opportunity when you bring the new draft 102 or prior to that?
Well, I think we'll be having internal discussions prior to that. I mean, we have to flesh out the concepts and everything. And I think some of the stuff that has been brought up, we'll probably also want to do a legal review in addition to a policy review, just to see what are the options and are they viable. And so we'll be doing that over the next couple of weeks. And all we have as far as, in the Administrative Procedures Act, we'll need to complete that rule project with the initial CR 102 of some form or another within 6 months. And so we have plenty of time to do a supplemental and go through that process before it would be automatically withdrawn. And so I don't anticipate a need to withdraw the rule project, just probably to update it if that's the direction that we decide to go. And so like I said, there's going to be a lot of review and evaluation going on this next week. And we already have a meeting set up to do that next week.
And on another rule package on the THC, that we heard that hearing today, and the questions we got or suggestions around a list of compounds that would be covered. Is that, if we're in the rules, it would probably be substantive, but is there a way to do that wouldn't be considered a substantive change in that 102?
Yeah, I think there's some potential opportunities to examine. And, in full transparency, I'm a little reluctant to put in a list of compounds. There's over 100 to 150 compounds in the plant. We know of,
Today.
Fairly few. Yeah. And so by creating lists, we're typically stuck with lists, and then we'd have to go through a whole rule project. Whereas if we were able to identify it in a different way, and we're thinking potentially similar to the aggravating and mitigating circumstances where we would create an agency publication. So it's very transparent and visible, but not necessarily built in the rule. That way we can be flexible when things are identified, particularly with the evolution of science going on around these topics currently. So the feedback and the concerns that were raised, again, because of the technical nature of the draft, I think, there's some apprehension about what it means, but we intentionally created that language around tetrahydrocannabinol, not THC. So anything that just has a tag of THC isn't necessarily going to be brought into that mix. And, kind of the question on a policy front is, do we want to create allowances, or do we want to just say, here's the core stuff that you have that's in the consideration, which is tetrahydrocannabinol, and not have other allowances. And that way we can be more flexible. And typically, you know, the allowance approach becomes burdensome with additional rule changes in the future. So we will need to explore that. If we do that through some other avenue other than the rule, then we wouldn't have a substantive change and we can move forward with a 103.
I mean, it wouldn't be substantive to make a change that, just for example, to just say, reference the agency publication that includes a list of compounds.
Yeah, and we could, I believe we could build that in without being a substantive change. And then that would offer that level of transparency where we're indicating that this information is out and available. And then we could even build in, you know, review timelines and those types of things to see if there's any updates that are needed. But I probably would put, you know, some sort of a qualifier in there that says, you know, this list right now is stuff we're looking at and subject to change based on scientific evaluations in the future. Yeah, and because we may have something that comes up that we don't know about today.
By the time we finish this meeting, there'll be a new compound coming out of the plant. So
yeah, those are some options. But overall, the THC draft, I think people were pretty satisfied with, and that was the one point from multiple areas that had a level of concern. And I think we may be able to address that without having to delay that implementation.
yeah, I thought the rules team did a good job the last 2 days presenting all that stuff and getting us through those hearings and everything. It was well done.
Thank you. And I think that is pretty much it for right now. Unless there's any other questions.
Any other question? No. Okay. We'll move to Deputy Director Tony Hood for a general agency update.
Thank you, Chair Postman and Board Member Vollendroff. I'm going to start off by going back to what Brian said about the website. I wanted to say that I have heard that setting up your own web pages is easy and people are liking it. I know that Jim Weatherly is enjoying setting up his page. He showed it to me many times and he's putting a lot of thought into it. He said it's easy to set up and I think he really likes having that control himself, a little creativity and able to play with that. So I think that's great. Also, Jillian Murphy gave kudos to Brian yesterday at management team about how clean the websites are looking. And so that's great to hear from that IT manager that she was pleased with that. So I'm really excited. I am jealous though when Brian talks about his year of technology, because I feel like regarding SMP, I'm going to have to say my decade of SMP or something. I don't know. Hopefully it won't be a decade of SMP, but I don't get to say a year of SMP. So it kind of hit me when he's like, so on the topic of SMP, we had a demonstration by our partners at Accenture of the mobile view, which is how you look at the Salesforce platform. So Salesforce is the platform, and they're the ones that create what we see on our smartphones when we look at the LCB portal. And so Accenture can modify that for us, but basically we start off with what Salesforce produces. And so they gave us a view of it. Accenture made some small changes that we asked for. It was very positive what we saw this week. I was very excited to have our communication partners there, Brian and Julie, at the presentation. It was much better than I expected. I had been sent several messages the previous couple weeks that caused me alarm. And so I was very happy to see that you could navigate this on your phone. You could turn your phone sideways to view more of the fields. Of course, you can get on your iPad or your tablet or your laptop if you want a different viewing more on your screen. So more to come on that, but positive news on where we're at. Salesforce, like any technology base, they update this every so often. We know a new rollout is going to come out this summer. So what we saw will be updated again before we go live with our portal. But we got a glimpse of what it will be like for a licensee to go and get or a new potential licensee to go get a mask permit or go get a banquet permit or something on their phone if they chose to do that. So that was exciting to see. And I thank Accenture for setting up that demo in person, having people there to demonstrate what it would look like on their phone. So the next thing I have is we have a wellness fair tomorrow here. Our wellness committee set that up. There are going to be vendors, and we are actually going to have puppies in the parking lot that are available for adoption, which is new and exciting. So I don't know a lot of details, except they will be there, and I'm excited personally. So anyhow, that is tomorrow. That's done by our wellness committee every year. Later today, we will be filing finance will be filing all of our decision packages. Well, I guess technically they could have been filed over during the last hour, but I know that they're all ready to be filed. And so we'll get that all underway. I know a ton of work was done by finance and by members of the whole people within the whole agency did a ton of work getting those fine-tuned and in excellent shape. Jillian Murphy did a presentation to WATEC last week, and we always do that regarding our technology decision packages, and they give us tips, and we revise our decision packages based on those tips. She did a great job presenting those and did some modifications based on those tips. That is a standard process. We need to present them to WATEC before we submit them to the governor's office. So that was great. She provided the slideshow to me in advance, and Director Lucella was able to look at it and make some comments. David Coons was also able to comment and make some edits. So I was happy with that. Jillian is a great asset for us and a great presenter. On the next thing I have is we have a half-day offsite meeting for management team next Monday. We are going to have the opportunity to have a debrief on the focus groups. We're going to get some information from Jessica Dang next Monday. We're going to have some time set aside where we won't be rushed with other things like we sometimes are at our regular management team meeting to debrief about that. We're also going to have Jim Weatherly there to give us a general update about his DEI work. And he has lots planned for his time with us as well. On the DEIB front, in October, we have an in-person all staff training coming up. So we have 4 different opportunities for people to join the in-person training. We have an instructor coming in. Anita Bingham and Jim Weatherly interviewed several consultants or outside facilitator firms, and they chose someone, a firm to hire, who's going to come here in person and do 4 half-day trainings so that we have enough opportunities for everyone to participate. Everyone is going to, so 4 half days, but that's because everyone just does 1 half day. We just are setting up 4, so there's enough opportunities. And so this person can travel throughout the state so people can come in person. I was happy that people could jump on a Teams call earlier this week to meet this person in advance so they would know who the instructor is. They could ask him questions. They could, so if they were apprehensive or maybe concerned or just wanted to know in advance what this person was like, they had the opportunity to meet Dion. So there were approximately 180 people that showed up to meet Dion. The meeting went over 30 minutes and people got to give comments to him. And I just think it was a great opportunity for them to see what he's like. And he did a great job responding to questions. So I was appreciative of that. And I hope it put some people at ease and gave them an opportunity to know a little bit more about his style and what's coming. I wanted to give a really quick kudos to licensing. I hope they don't mind. This is not something I normally do at this meeting, but Becky presented what I'll call a process improvement yesterday at management team. I know she probably thinks this is not worth mentioning, but I love the idea that they took this, what I call a process improvement, and put it in place. It has to do with staff putting together ideas for rule changes. And they get a lot of those from staff. And licensing is taking some ideas from Mallory, which come from our project portfolio strategic management plan. And in that plan, we make in that case, the person submitting the proposed project fill out a numerous different fields regarding how does this relate to the strategic plan? How does it affect external stakeholders, internal stakeholders? You have to fill out a lot of things. They're taking a page from that and using it for their staff to fill out related to rules, and then they can weight those rules or grade them and put them through that process. So I think that's just a great way. I love the fact that that thread is being carried through from our agency level project and then down to the division. So kudos for that. And I'm glad that she shared that with us. Our agency project manager has started, Kristen Boyston, and just started recently. I have hardly even met with her yet because I've been so busy, but she's getting up to speed on traceability. And she is meeting with the enforcement team. She's met with Dustin Brown and Candace Jagger, and she continues to meet with them. She's going to meet with all the directors and get to know them. She's meeting in person with Director Lucella and I tomorrow and getting up to speed. Her first thing will be traceability, and then we'll give her lots more to work on as well. But she'll come here to present as soon as we have something ready, so you guys can all meet her. We're fortunate to get to steal her from ESD. So, and that's all I have, unless there's any questions.
I don't see any. Thank you, Tony. And then Will Lucella, Director for the Director's comments.
All right. Well, good afternoon, Chair Postman, Board Member Vollendroff. Just real quick, continuing to meet with industry representatives, state agencies. Want to do a special shout out to Board Member Vollendroff with regard to the focus groups. Thank you very much for your participation. It really made the process seamless. I think everyone got a lot out of it. We look forward to being able to bring it to the board as well, so we can share some of those results and talk about next steps. Spent some time with the Department of Licensing talking about biometrics and digital licensing. And so there'll be more to come with that. They've got a report that's due in December. And so we'll know much more in the December, January timeframe. So that's all I have for right now. And if there's any questions.
Anything else? That takes us to the end. Member Vollendroff, unless you have anything else to add today?
Nope. Thank you.
Great. Okay, then. Thanks, everybody. And we're adjourned.
Thank you. Bye.